Thank you all for being here for the first Ask CASA of 2025. I am very excited about this Ask CASA. It is going to be presented by Lili. She is our development associate here at CASA. She is so wonderful. I'm sure that many of you know her. But she created this entire handbook that she will be sharing on her screen and working all of us through today. Lili and I were just talking. She first presented the idea of this project to us as an organization back in August of 2023. So that just goes to show it is a labor of love, a lot of hard work. And we're just very excited for you all to use this as a resource as advocates to help guide the adolescents that you are working with if they're preparing to go to college and to share it with them as well to even read through themselves. So I will pass it over to Lili so that she can talk about the passion behind this project and then we'll get into the content of it.
Thank you, Jordan. And thank you all for being here. Like Jordan said, I'm Lili. I am a development associate at CASA, and I recently graduated my undergrad with a Bachelor's of Arts in Science with a major in sociology from Clark University. I'm currently pursuing my master's degree there as well in public administration. And all of that came out of my interest for supporting youth. And that's eventually how I found CASA and how I got involved. And I'm so grateful to now be a part of the organization in a more formal matter. But initially, all I really wanted was to be a volunteer advocate. Finding a career passion out of that was just a really wonderful coincidence. I have always had, a soft spot for this kind of work. I have three adopted cousins. My aunt has a new foster child living in her home now that all of her other kids, three of whom were fostered and then adopted, fled off to college. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of the organization and the work that CASA does. Um, I was a volunteer advocate for about a year ago, and Chrissy Shaw was my supervisor, and on my case, I had two high school students. I was really grateful to be able to work with them, seeing as I'm on the younger side, and I recently went through college. I actually hadn't graduated yet. Um, and when I was speaking with them, it occurred to me, they're in high school. It's probably a good time to start thinking about after high school, especially because when you turn 18, you start to age out of the system, um, and a lot of the resources kind of become lesser and lesser. So, thinking about college, thinking about graduation, both of the kids who were in high school did aspire to go to college, which was music to my ears. It's really hard to be in that world with few resources, few people advocating for you, and still want to feel motivated to pursue something without all those resources or feel hopeful about the future. Um, so I was really glad that they wanted to go to college. That was something that was important to them. With that being said, my follow-up question was, where do you want to go and how do you know what the first steps are to getting there? One of the kids was a junior in high school, and both of them had no idea what the next steps were, which I'm not shocked by. It's a very complicated process. But it occurred to me, if you're not in a position where all of these resources are accessible to you, are readily available to you, the process of understanding how to go to college is extremely complicated, nuanced. It's just not obvious. So that's where the College Prep Handbook kind of came out of. It was this desire to support advocates and support the high school students that they serve. With their college hopes and dreams, their post high school hopes and dreams, and just make sure that the the baseline information is accessible, is thought out and carefully provided, just in case the high schools that these youth attend don't necessarily provide it in an accessible format or don't provide it at all. Um, as volunteer advocates, it's so important that we um, advocate and show up for the youth we serve. And that means also helping them feel hopeful and feel ready for their future after they age out of the system or after they get adopted or find permanent placement, et cetera, et cetera. So with that, I'll share my screen. Um, and just show the final product. So this is the handbook. It is currently in digital format, obviously, but this will be accessible on our CASA website, on a flash drive, and Jordan, I know, sent around the link. And then if you would like it printed, that is definitely something we can make happen. But yeah, the goal is for volunteer advocates to use this um, with the youth that they serve, with the high school youth. So one of my priorities was to make the information accessible to an adult and also to a high school student. Um, there is a lot of information here about the application process, finding a good college, what it means to find a good fit for you. Um, it's not just how to apply, but how to begin the thoughts that go into deciding to go to college. Um, and yeah, so I just hope that, in partnership, advocates can mentor the youth they serve, and prepare to go to college. While the information is fairly general, there is some specifics about for foster youth. So DCF resources, examples of colleges that have special programs um, that are in place to help foster youth or youth who are impacted by the foster care system attend their college, things like that. So I will just walk you through it. Table of contents, of course, about our mission, which I'm sure you all know pretty well by now. Um, and then an introduction, which is kind of everything I just said. But yeah, um, foster youth impacted by the welfare system are incredibly resilient. And with that being said, it is our incredible privilege to help them with their hopes and dreams. A college diploma in today's society has become a staple for success. A 2011 study, however, found that only 3% of foster students earn a college degree, which means that there's a significant difference in the success in career and education between youth who were impacted by the foster care system and youth who were not. Um, so yeah. The first step is college research, which as a kid I found to be really empowering. It was a little overwhelming, but it was really empowering. And it was fun. You know, it's kind of like shopping. And I think that's the mentality that every student should go into it with, is that you're shopping around, you're looking around. It's not about what college will take me, but it's about what college do I want to attend? What school do I want to attend? I mean, this is a place that you hypothetically are going to give your life to for 2 to 4 years, maybe even more, maybe less. And that should be just as much an opportunity for you as it is for the school. Um, so you want to make sure you're looking into college tours. Those might be in person, those also might be virtual. There are plenty of websites that have a collection of photos and little videos and even YouTube videos of an ambassador at a school kind of showing you around. In-person tours are definitely the best opportunity if that's feasible for the youth you're serving and you're advocating for. Also, info sessions or interviews are a great opportunity. It's a time to show your interest, show that you want to go to that school. As a matter of fact, schools write down how many points of contact you have. So the more a student goes to school, even if it's just for a tour or just for an info session, or for an info session tour and interview, that's 3 points of contact. That's 3 points of interest. And schools take note of that, especially for high school students. So that's a great way to show your interest, heighten your application. It's also the best way to determine if a student likes a school or not. When I was touring schools, I was grateful to be able to go to a few of them. I could tell pretty quickly if I enjoyed being in that space or not. There were a couple schools I went to, and after the tour, I just knew it wasn't a good fit for me. And there were a couple schools like Clark, where I graduated from, where I felt really at peace and at home and comfortable. So that was a really meaningful experience. Um, there are also websites. Naviance is the big one that I used back in the day, about 5 years ago, where you can kind of scroll around and look at different schools, see their like fast facts. Um, and that's also a great place to start seeing what types of information you'll need to provide for your application. Post-graduation success is also really important. Um, when you're looking at a school, you want to make sure that they're showing a decent rate of post-graduation success, which might mean 98% of students get a job after graduation. That's awesome. But what jobs are they getting? 98% of students getting a job after graduation could mean they're going and working at their local coffee shop. That's a job. While a coffee shop is great and I love going to a local coffee shop and I appreciate people working there, if a student's going to a school to pursue an education in um, IT support, IT technology, and they're working at a coffee shop after, that doesn't shine great for the school. Maybe it's not a great fit because it's not showing that students are getting a job within their major, within their interest after graduation. Um, Another piece that is important to look at when you're doing college research is the type of school you're looking at. It's good to get a sense of, do you want to go to community college, a state school, a small liberal arts school? And that's all worked out in this. But community colleges kind of have a bad rep. And I think that is ridiculous. Community college is significantly more affordable. It's significantly more flexible. So if a student is seeking an opportunity to work full-time while they're getting their degree, community college has way more systems in place to provide that for a student. And a lot of the time, they have paths to a 4-year degree. So just because you're going to community college for 2 years, that doesn't mean you're not going to eventually graduate with a 4-year bachelor's degree. You'll likely graduate in 2 years with an associate's degree, and then they have very clear systems in place to help you move along to complete your final 2 years at a state school or any school you'd like. I know someone from my high school really valued track and field. They really wanted to run at Boston University. Very good school, very intense school, and expensive. So this friend of mine went through 2 years at a local community college, got a wonderful degree for 2 years, wonderful education, and then moved on and graduated with a bachelor's degree in 4 years, got to run track and field, saved money, saved time, got to get their grades up. It was a really amazing experience, and I know that's the case for a lot of different people. Um, There are also a lot of identity-based schools, which can be really valuable for a student. There are all women's colleges, HBCUs, which stands for Historically Black Colleges and Universities. There are also schools that are uh, designed specifically for Native American Indigenous students, um, and more students for schools for Latinx students. And these are popping up more and more often. Um, and these are open hypothetically to any student, despite their identity. However, they're a clear majority in the identity that that school identifies with. And that can be a safe space, a comfortable space for a student. That school will probably have more resources that that student will identify with. State schools are typically larger. They're also typically slightly more affordable. Um, so state schools like UMass Amherst, UMass Boston, they offer in-state tuition and they offer a bigger campus with more people, more resources, more professors, more opportunities for you to get a degree in a narrow concentration. So some pros, more resources, opening more doors for students, and they receive more money from donors. So if you're going to an in-state school, so if I'm from Massachusetts and I'm going to University of Massachusetts, I'll get in-state tuition, which saves you a whole lot more money than if you're going to a private school or if I'm from Massachusetts and I'm going to a California state school. Um, with that being said, there are definitely some cons if you're the type of student who wants to go to a smaller school, a school where the class sizes are smaller, um, or you want to stay closer to home and the state school near you doesn't offer the type of degree you're looking for. Um, so when you're looking at private schools, they can come in all shapes and sizes. Clark is a private school where I went, and I really valued how small the class sizes were, how the relationships with your professors are. Those relationships are easier to form. And I definitely experienced that. I had regular meetings with my advisor. I had a relationship with my advisor. I still email her now with questions, and I sent her this handbook to show her that, what she taught me came to fruition and inspired me to do something with my degree and to do something that could help the community. Um, there's a lot of benefits to a smaller university, I mean, a smaller school. Um, Typically, they're more expensive, but a lot of private schools are making a lot of progress in making sure that any student who wants to go to that school, that is accepted to that school, is able to afford to attend that school. MIT just came out with an amazing promise that any student that attends MIT will be able to afford to go to MIT. And that's an extremely renowned, prestigious school where you can get a fabulous education. So, a major theme when students are considering where to go, a lot of the time, the fear is, I don't know if I can even afford to go there. And while that is a valid concern and should not be discouraged, it also should not be something that prohibits a student from aspiring to go there. If a student's dream is to go to Harvard and it seems too expensive, encourage them to still go on that path, see what can happen. You just never know. And while financial burdens are very valid, it shouldn't be the first thing that a student's afraid of, especially in the foster care system where so often all they're met with is, barriers, and our job is to inspire them and to try to find what opportunities are out there. Um, Awesome. So, a huge piece of college research is college websites, which are way more complicated than they should be. I remember when I first was exploring Clark, and then even after I got in, I needed to find X, Y, and Z, and I was like, there are 50 tabs here and I don't know which one goes to which. Um, so it's important to look for a few key components of a website when you're still researching schools. The first one is admissions. That will give you application requirements, that'll give you deadlines, contact information for the admissions office, and admissions offices, their job is to be helpful. So definitely, I encourage the youth on your cases to not hesitate to reach out to those admissions offices with questions, concerns, anything. They will direct you to the proper person. Um, that is literally their job, and they are all very friendly. They're literally hired to encourage you to show interest in that school. The next tab I'd say is very important is academics. While schools have a ton of majors, not every school will have every single major you might be looking for. So if a student is extremely interested in psychology, maybe not a great example because most schools will have a psychology department. Um, but you can see if you're looking at a technical college like Worcester Polytechnic Institute, they might have a psychology department, but you can also see that they have engineering and mechanics and you know, very science and engineering heavy. And then psychology, that might not be the school to pursue a psychology degree in. It also could be, not to dissuade you. But also, if you're looking for a more niche or less common department, if you're looking for creative writing, it isn't a given that every single school is going to have a creative writing department. Um, Going off of the topic of finances, it's very good to get familiar with the financial aid office, especially if that's a major concern for you or the student you're assisting. But that's where they'll have information on tuition costs, which can get you a good standard, a good expectation. But they'll also have information on financial aid, scholarships, grants, what kind of loans they encourage. Um, and then you can kind of compare and contrast with other schools you're looking at. What schools are more expensive? What schools are less expensive? What schools have in-state tuition? How much does the state school in Colorado offer for out-of-state tuition? And then campus life is also really important. A lot of schools are the type of college you go to if you really want to keep to yourself, get your degree, move on. A lot of schools really encourage students to be immersed in the community or be immersed in the college campus life. One thing that drew me to Clark is that they encourage their students to work within the Worcester community, to get volunteer hours, to get internships in the Worcester community, and really work to develop it and develop your passions within that community. And that was evident from the website. Not every school highlighted that as a feature. Um, so moving right along, I know there's a lot of information. Um, the Common App. This is the most common application, unironically, for students to use when they're applying to college. It's literally an application, it's a website with applications for pretty much every single college in the US. Um, so I loved that I could go to one website and look at all of my applications in one place. And that's really important to familiarize yourself with when you're beginning that process of applying to colleges. You can start an application and then not submit it. I remember going through the UConn application and I was pretty set on going to Clark at this point, but University of Connecticut had really great opportunities and I saw what they were requiring for my application and ended up saying, I don't have the bandwidth for this. As much as I'd love to attend the school or see if I can attend the school, I don't have the bandwidth for the specifics that they were requesting for me. And it was great to be able to go through that process and make that decision on my own in one place. But that's also where you'll see, what they want out of your college essay and what other smaller writing supplements they're asking of you. Which brings us into a nice segue to the college essay. This is moving away from the college research aspect of it all. The college essay should be better known as a personal statement. The college application is very number oriented. It's like get your transcript and take your standardized exams and send that off to someone who's going to judge you based on all these numbers and forms. The college essay is the best way to show who you are as a student, as a person, and how you'll be at this college or university. It can show what you're passionate about. It can show what inspires you. It can show what barriers you overcame. It can show your adversity and many things more. People write comedic personal statements about how a meal inspired them and motivated them to be a better person. Whereas I wrote about how I was passionate for social change and social justice. So there's a wide range. And students should feel empowered to write about something that encompasses them. Um, okay, taking a breather, because that was a lot of information. Um, I'm not going to speak as intensely about financial compensation because that's not an interesting thing to hear about. And it's so nuanced and specific. But financial compensation is a really difficult and important topic to familiarize yourself with. For a high school student, that could be particularly daunting. So I would urge advocates to work with them closely on this. It's daunting, scary, it's confusing, but opportunities for financial aid, financial compensation, financial support are available. They're just not necessarily easy to find, which is the unfortunate piece of it all. The FAFSA, a bit of a tongue twister, the free application for federal student aid. This is something you're going to fill out. I almost guarantee. And that's how the government decides, what kind of government aid they can give you. Um, so filling that out is important, and that gets passed on to the school as well. And the government works with the school to determine how much aid they could give you, what that might look like, based on the student's family situation, financial situation. It is a free application, which is great. Um, and with that being said, each state and school has very unique and specific deadlines. So getting ahead of it is extremely important. Being aware that that's going to come up and that's going to be of importance. That's the first step. Getting familiar with the website, that's important. But there are many other resources, especially in Massachusetts. Um, the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority has a ton of resources for students, prospective students, students who have undergone the child welfare program, and they were gracious enough to list out what you might need to fill out the FAFSA. Um, which as a high schooler, I can tell you right now, I had no idea what a W-2 was. So the fact that they listed out is great. As an advocate, I would walk through these with the students if they're not sure what these things are. Make sure they know what their social security number is. Um, yeah, go through banking. Financial literacy is not taught these days, and it is extremely valuable.
Lily, we do have a question in the chat related to the FAFSA. Rebecca
Absolutely.
asked when the FAFSA should be completed.
So that's when the deadlines are rather important. There's no specific deadline. I would recommend looking at your state, going to the FAFSA website, going to the school's website when you're really serious about applying to schools. You don't need to worry about the FAFSA until the student's gotten into a school, because it's specific to what school you're going to. But once you know what school you're going to, you get your financial aid package from that school specifically. That's when it's time to start looking into the FAFSA to supplement the leftover charges. So I'll get into this shortly, but there are merit-based scholarships and application-based scholarships you can apply to at a school specifically. Those will be subtracted from your initial tuition, and then you'll see how much is remaining, and that's when it's important to start thinking about aid, and that's where the FAFSA comes in. I hope that answers it. Um, One thing I do want to touch on, I think it's very valuable for a student who was in the child welfare system and maybe doesn't have clear ties to their biological family or an adopted family to claim independence. This will give that student a lot more freedom in determining how much money they need, how they apply for that money. It won't have clear cut ties to requiring information from that student's family. Um, it is definitely a process, but you can just claim independence on the FAFSA, and that will give you more freedom, even if you don't have financial independence in other realms. Um, Students should also be prepared to prove their eligibility for independence due to foster care status. And that can come from a CASA worker. Um, there are different ways, and that whole process is pretty narrow and specific. But as a CASA worker, as a volunteer advocate, you might be the person called upon to prove that child or that student deserves or needs or is an independent. Scholarships are a great way to help bring down the costs of tuition. Merit-based scholarships, there's not a lot you do about that. When you apply to a school, they look at your grades, they look at your college essay, they look at everything you've submitted, they determine how much money they'd like to give you to encourage you to attend the school based on your merit. So your grades in high school, what extracurriculars you did, what interests you have, etc. Um, then there are application-based scholarships, and those come from a student applying. Those can come from the school itself that you're applying to. They can also come from your local grocery store or a local nonprofit or bigger organizations that support foster youth around the country. One of my best friends in college, she got a $500 scholarship from Big Y, which is a local department grocery store. So there are websites that exist where you can literally shop around at different application-based scholarships. Some of them are very specific. You write an essay about how you overcame a certain challenge in a certain realm, maybe as something related to your identity. And some are really vague. They just want to support students by seeing that they can write a good essay or seeing that they have struggled financially in their family or in their life. And identity-based scholarships do exist. So um, if a student lives in or exists as a certain minority group, there are scholarships that exist specifically for minority groups. So those are important to check out. And as foster care impacted youth, there are scholarships that exist for foster care impacted youth. So those are very important to seek out. On this page 23, I've just broken down the types of loans that exist. And there are plenty of resources if you seek them out that will help you break those down. The college financial aid departments should also be really helpful with breaking those down once you know where you're going to school. There are grants, work study opportunities, also important to be in touch with the financial aid department. Yeah, and students, if they're interested in working in college, if they need extra personal financial help, you can get a work study, which is the school will guarantee you an on-campus job. So you're receiving income, you're working for income while you're attending that school. Students can still work at their school. If they don't have a work study, they can still apply just as they would with any other job. But a work study is a great opportunity to guarantee that opportunity. Okay, moving along to the exam part. There are a lot of exams that float around, a lot of names. The PSAT stands for the practice SAT, and then there's the SAT itself. The SAT is one type of standardized exam that a student might take to enhance their application, or it might be required for their application. And the PSAT is just a practice exam. Schools, high schools, hopefully provide that for free, but they don't always. So I would just check in with the school, check in with the student. If it's an opportunity, the student should definitely take that opportunity because it's free practice. It's set up just like the real thing. Tests and exams can be really difficult, especially in this format. You're sitting for a long time answering questions that you're not trained to answer in school. So there's also the ACT, which is kind of an alternative to the SAT. Some students prefer one over the other. I know the ACT offers a science section where the SAT doesn't. They're also graded differently. So it's good to look into both, maybe get a textbook that kind of gives you practice exams, see which one might make the most sense. A lot of schools are becoming test optional, which is amazing, and I'm all for that. But at the end of the day, a lot of schools aren't. And if a student is really interested in attending a school that is not test optional, they will have to take either the ACT or the SAT, and that takes practice and time and effort. There are also AP exams, and those are only offered if a student takes an AP class in high school, then they can take the AP exam for that class. So if you take AP statistics, you can take the AP statistics exam. Same for psychology or calculus or whatever. It is not required, and it does cost money, and it takes time and effort and studying. But it's an opportunity, and sometimes colleges will take if you got they're graded on a 1 through 5, so you can get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe if you get a 4, the school you're attending won't make you take calculus or won't make you take English or whatever, based on your score from that AP exam. So that can be a great opportunity to go into college with credits. Um, they're not necessary. They are not necessary. They can be a great opportunity, but they are not necessary. Um, All of these exams, of course, cost money. They should not, but they do. So fee waivers do exist, which is great. So it's important to look at those fee waivers, what the high school supplies you, um, or what the organization that's applying the exam has to offer, and just apply for those fee waivers. My understanding is that fee waivers are pretty easy to come by. Like if you need it, they'll give it to you. But you do have to be sure you're applying for that. Um, okay, timeline and deadlines. PSATs are ultimately optional, but given the opportunity to take them for free, it is very important that the student takes it. It helped me a lot to understand what I was getting myself into and just to help me get into that mindset. Um, and as you as advocates are carrying and helping and walking students through this application process from freshman year of high school on, it's important to promote college as a positive option. Not every student wants to go to college, but they should feel that it's an opportunity that they can take advantage of if they want it. And they should feel positively about that as an opportunity. Maybe they think they might want it and they start to look into it, and then they're like, okay, no, that's not for me. I just want to work after school or think about it later in life. That is totally fine. But I would I hate that so many students feel like college isn't an option for them, or they won't succeed in college, or that they don't deserve to go to college, because it is an amazing way to grow your career, further your education, and every student does deserve it. Um, it is not a privilege, it is a right to pursue your education. So I wrote out a lovely little timeline that students and advocates can utilize. Freshman year, it's about getting a sense of what you might be interested in studying long term. No one's gonna know, to be clear. Freshman year, I wanted to be a physicist. I studied sociology in college and now work in development. Very, very different things. Um, but it's good to understand that as a freshman in high school, you are beginning your adulthood and your life in the world of higher education. And it's important to know that every, decision they make related to education could set them up for something positive down the road. Um, and then sophomore year is when you really start to think about it more seriously. You start to think about what kind of classes should I be taking? Should I pursue an AP course next year? Should I, take the PSAT? That's usually sophomore year is usually when the PSAT starts to be offered. Junior year is when it gets really hot and heavy. So that's when you start thinking about what colleges are out there, what type of school you want to apply to, what AP classes I need to take, what exam I want to take. Do I want to take the SAT? Do I want to take the ACT? I recommend taking them sooner rather than later so that, first of all, because they book out very far in advance. And sometimes the only option for you is to take one 30 minutes away. And so you need to plan and prepare for that and base a schedule off of that. You can start planning college tours. We keep going. Junior year is a heavy year. Spent 3 pages talking about it. So you take your exams, you start thinking about what AP courses you want to take that year and senior year. Um, you want to start thinking about what colleges are the best fit, narrowing down your list. What places are you actually going to apply to versus what colleges were of interest to you? And that's when you want to start thinking about having conversations with family members, caregivers, DCF about what financial opportunities are available. And just thinking about where you see yourself in the next 2 to 4 years. Um, then we get to senior year, you're going to try taking the SAT, ACT, whatever it is again. If you didn't like your score the first time or second time, or for me, the fifth time. And then you want to really start looking at application deadlines as well. There are 4 kinds, or 4 common kinds. There's early decision, early action, early decision, and action 2, and then regular decision. Briefly, early decision is binding. If you apply to a school early your senior year and you get in, you're going to that school. If you don't get in, you still have all the options ahead of you. You can only apply to one school early decision because it is binding. Early action, it shows you're very interested in that school, but it is not a binding decision. It just means, you got your stuff in, you were proactive, you know you want to go to that school, you got everything done, but it's not binding. Both early deadlines show that you're particularly interested in that school, and that looks good when you're advocating for yourself to attend that school. With that being said, some students want to get another semester under their belt. These applications are due early into senior year, so schools aren't going to be looking at your first semester of high school for senior year. They're only going to be looking at the first 3 years. If students need that extra semester to show their growth, their pattern of getting better grades, or having another semester of solid grades to prove that they want to and deserve to go to that school, that's very reasonable. It also, if you need more time to take more exams, to take more classes, that's also reasonable. And that's when early decision and action 2 deadlines come in, and regular decision. Those come later in the year. They're usually not binding, and it gives seniors more time to finish their applications. I dove into some considerations for foster youth of color, and youth of color, just like I spoke about earlier, colleges and universities have opportunities specifically for students who are not white students. And those can be institutions that have special resources and communities that will make a student feel more comfortable. Aging out of the system is really important to consider. Look at what schools offer for youth who are aging out of the system and what programs exist, even if they're not tied to the college or institution that student's going to. Thinking about how are they going to support themselves in independent living programs, mental health, what extended foster care opportunities might be available, what affinity spaces are available, and what accessibility services are available. These are all extremely important considerations. And then also, just as with any student, internship and career opportunities are the follow-up after you've started college. So foster youth deserve the opportunity to apply to jobs and internships just as any student would. So looking at those opportunities, there are often opportunities available specifically for students who are impacted by the foster care system. There's also a page in here about additional information, what it means to transfer, what different courses of college there are, And then I have a lovely little timeline that you could really just hone in on prior to freshman year of high school, by the end of freshman year, prior to sophomore year, and so on and so forth. And it kind of gives you a little checklist and then some resources that you can browse through. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen um, and open it up to any questions. I know that's a lot of information, but I am so grateful that you all stuck through with me. And yeah, the goal is that you read it a few times and you go back to whatever section is relevant to you. You don't read it all at once and expect to understand it right then and there.
Thank you, Lily. This is amazing. I
It
did want
is.
to add a note as well before questions come in. Some of you may have seen on the RSVP form for this training, but in March on the 27th, we will be having a DCF worker coming on to an Ask CASA session to talk about their process with youth who are aging out of the system and what support they can offer the youth that they are serving. So it'll kind of be nice to have these two trainings close together so that we can understand and guide the youth even further after we learn from them. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions. Rebecca, I actually do see that you had one in a chat that I may have missed. She asked, is early decision binding regardless of knowing financial support?
So unfortunately, yes. But with that being said, there are exceptions that are made. I have heard of, you get into a school you really want to go to and they just don't offer you financial support in the capacity you need. If that's the case, there are special circumstances. But it is good to know and have an understanding of, what scholarships you're going to apply to, what aid you're going to apply for. To ensure that if you apply for a school early decision, you can find a way to afford it.
Thanks. This is really just spectacular. It's really
Thank
good.
you.
And I'm assuming that we're free to use these with students that aren't in the foster system. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, really nicely done.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Lily?
Excellent, excellent information.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Even if questions pop up later, you all know that you can always be reaching out and we'll give you guys a response. I shared in the chat the link to access it on our website, but if you have any trouble finding it, just make sure you reach out to either me, Lily, or even your supervisor. They all know where it is, and we'll make sure that we provide it to you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to Lily for all the time and effort she put into this. Very nice presentation, Lily.
Thank you.
Thank
So I've
you.
already made arrangements I downloaded it and it's ready to be loaded on the flash drives for anyone who wants it that way and for our next training group.
Thank you, Glow. All right, anything else? Well, thank you, Lily, so much. Like everyone said, you are wonderful. This resource is wonderful, and we really, really appreciate everything you have put into it. And thank you all so much for being here, those who are on this call and who will watch it later. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.